everybody, Brian Horvath here, and I'm super excited about this interview, this On Purpose podcast I had recently with LaTania Scott. LaTania is a Montessori trained educator who is fired up about her purpose. Matter of fact, LaTania knows her purpose, is living it out, and loving it. I met LaTania multiple years ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago, at a church group called You Are Created for Good Works, where folks were there to go through steps to hear God calling, get the right job, and maximize their career when they were in career transition. And I met LaTania as somebody that was doing life in a way that wasn't bringing her the utmost joy. She really wasn't executing and living out and loving her purpose. Well, what you're going to hear from this podcast is how LaTania took the first steps to get what she needed to take care of herself, to get equipped, to get educated, to get encouraged, to get ready, to take the steps that God was calling for her. What you're going to hear in this podcast is how she allowed faith to overcome her fear, how she partnered with an entrepreneurial husband and really started taking steps, even with 2 kids, in a direction to fulfill her calling. Yes, her career, but even more importantly, her calling. She's overcome the resistance. She's overcome even things like racism and inequality and stupid stuff like that happens to exist in this world, to still move ahead, to still take on her dreams, her goals, despite the challenges. And she's bringing people with her. You're going to be really excited about hearing how she went from someone trying to figure out her calling to actually someone that's taking steps of faith to overcome fear, to overcome doubt or worry, to go seek to serve those who need most, which she does best. You're going to love hearing from LaTania as I interview her here on this On Purpose podcast. She really does know, live, and love her purpose. And I think after hearing it, you'll be on the road to doing the same. LaTania, so glad that you're here. Excited to share with folks about how you have been on quite a journey. And part of that journey was us connecting a while back, a couple years back. And I'd love to hear from you. I got my story. But I'd love to hear from you how we met and what was, the reason for that meeting, because we met in a group, right?
Yes, so we met for Creative for Good Works, the small group, I guess what you would say, like a breakout session from Grace Family.
Right.
And that was awesome. That was I think maybe like 4 years ago now.
Oh,
I think.
whoa. What?
I think it's been 4 years ago now. And um I was sitting at church service one day, and during that church service, they were discussing joining a group. And I had just recently come back to the fold, coming back to church, and my husband and I stumbled on Grace. Not even we didn't stumble, actually. We were invited,
Okay,
and
good.
first kind of voluntold that we needed to come, and so we did,
It's
and
like that,
quickly
huh?
fell in love. Yes, and quickly fell in love. Honestly, the both of us were looking for a church home and to strengthen our marriage, to come back to God, because both of us really had strayed. And
Okay.
so the first thing that we did, besides coming to church service, was actually having our son blessed. We had his blessing ceremony, and that really was what pulled us in. But we were sitting at church one day, and they were like, join a small group. And the whole time I'm like, no way. I am not joining any small groups. I don't want to do
I just
that.
got
Uh,
here.
right. I don't
Yeah.
know what this is about. And but I was so miserable in my workspace.
Hmm.
Miserable. And I also was having some like personal issues with what I later learned was postpartum, and I needed to do something for myself. And so me coming to Creative for Good Works was a way for me to do something for myself. And that was really, it really wasn't about being miserable at work. That was like a secondary kind of symptom, if you will, of my emotional well-being was not well. And
Right,
I
right.
think that the initial symptom that drove me to wanting to join that particular group was needing to do something for myself. So I joined the course, and I was terrified, just because it was something out of my normal box. But also because I didn't feel like I was religious enough. I wasn't godly enough
Mm.
to be around other people and in this church group, right? So I was like very nervous about that. And it also was late. The time of day was late. And I was a newer mom, and me getting away from the house was an issue. And
Mm.
then coming at bedtime was hard because I felt selfish. I felt a pretty significant amount of guilt not being home at bedtime to be a part of the bedtime routine.
Sure.
But I had to tell myself that I needed to do something for myself. All I was doing was taking care of other people, but not taking care of myself. And so that was really how I ended up um, at the small group Creative for Good Works. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Oh my gosh, I think it's fantastic. It's neat. I didn't even know some of that, and so I'm glad I put the question out there. For those who are listening, I just thought this would be like a softball question just to kind of get us chatting. But what there's a lot of lessons and wisdom in what you just shared, and really appreciate you being transparent enough and authentic enough to share that. I think that's going to bless some people that are listening.
Yeah, because mothers really struggle with guilt
Hmm.
and really struggle with how to balance being a mom and then being you. And I definitely have over the years watched other friends have babies and always adamantly Vietnamese.
I know where you're going.
I just
Vehemently.
refuse to lose. Yes, yes, that one. I refuse to lose myself, and I did. I lost myself,
Hmm.
and I needed to find me again. And this was the start, and that's kind of interesting as a reflection point. This really was my start to finding
Wow.
myself. It
Oh
really
my
was.
gosh. Well, I think it's awesome. I mean, the course that for those that are listening, that you are created for good works is a 7 week course, 8 week course put together from a workbook called You Are Created for Good Works, and basically helping people to understand that they're made in God's image as His masterpiece, created for good works in advance, that they would walk in them. And so I love how you said that. It's kind of a great, in many respects, a starting point or a foundation point for you to continue to walk out the journey we're going to talk about today, which is so exciting. So glad you're sharing today.
Well, you
Uh,
also asked me if
yeah.
what was one of my favorite things
Oh
about
yeah.
the course,
Yeah.
and I was gonna say, and I know that you're gonna know that this is my very teacher response, but I loved the workbook. I really liked the workbook.
Good.
I like the framework that it created. I really like structure, and it worked for
Yes.
me.
Yes. I love it. I love it because I actually was talking to my wife about that today or yesterday. Something about just I love steps and frameworks because I got a lot of ideas, but it helps me harness and focus and
Mhm.
just have even a confidence knowing that I'm walking out a journey, that it's not abstract or happenstance. It's actually on purpose, on pace, and you kind of can
Mhm.
check off a box, right? Like in a good
Yes,
way, that you're on the right
I like.
track. Yeah, me too. I think that's why we get along so well too. So we have that same found enjoyment out of that. So that's good. So great. So I think you answered a couple of questions I put together in a row here, and really what prompted you to enroll. How did you overcome the fear of sitting in there with people you didn't know in a new environment and be
Mhm.
able to come to the place where we are today of being excited about what you gathered, what you learned, and what you're doing? How did you overcome the
It
fear
um
or
you just have
trepidation
to
maybe? Or yeah, go ahead.
you just have to put one foot in front of the other, right? Like
Hmm.
I put my big girl panties on and I went to class,
Yeah.
despite anything that I was kind of self-sabotaging. I was just like, you know what, just go. And everybody
Okay.
was very warm, very pleasant, and very transparent. And that I think was the best part because I knew that it was okay to be myself in that space. It was a safe
Hmm.
space to it was definitely a safe space to be. And to be honest, like your approach to like life and every time I had a conversation or just you breaking the ice was really wonderful. Like just being laid back and silly but fun and normal, that was great.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all going through a journey, right? And so I'm learning how to have more fun and be more laid back as the days go, especially with two little kids. So
Yes.
good. So thank you for the compliment. I receive it. Um, when you were getting into the group environment and conversation with Tanya, because obviously we're here to really talk about like a little teaser is that you're working on something big and you're working on something impactful and something exciting, not just for you, of course, but for others. And I really can't wait to talk about that here in a couple minutes. But what were you hoping to gain? Like, so here you are, you're going, all right, I'm trying out church. I'm trying out a new church. I'm trying out a new class. I'm trying out a group. I mean, there were so many new things at one time. What did you hope? What was the one big nugget or takeaway you were looking to get out of being there?
I remember because I wrote it in my book, my
Okay.
workbook. I remember writing that I was trying to figure out if the current career path that I was on, if this was my forever, was this my calling, or is this just a career? I believe was the correct verbiage behind it. And in the end, I figured out that being an educator, because I've kind of even shifted my use of words. Like I feel like the language around things also kind of can empower you or deflate you. And
Hmm.
things that I always have felt was that I I really was calling myself teacher, and um, I felt like that was very, how do you say it, restrictive.
Yes. Good
Instead of
word.
her saying educator, and so now I've switched from just being teacher because I've always, as I say, didn't want to be a teacher minion my whole life, and
That's great.
because you kind of just do as you're told. You're not actually being
Right.
um, in the moment. Even in my space, my educational space of Montessori, I felt still very restricted, and so I've switched from saying teacher to saying educator because that I think is more applicable across whatever setting I choose to work in or serve in. Yeah. I've been doing
Yeah.
that. I've been doing that a lot lately. That I also took away from the classes. How can I be of service? And I think that being an educator can apply no matter where you are, no matter if I
Yes.
go and do a training at a at at a business facility, at a bank. I can do a training at a bank, but that's still an educator. And I think that that has really been great. But I was looking for, back to what you were asking me, I was looking for, is this my calling or is this just a career? And I ended up walking away saying, really, this is genuinely my calling. But it's where I fulfill that calling is what I needed to shift.
Oh my gosh, that is like gold. I remember it's cool how as soon as you said I wrote it down, it just dawned on me that I remember you asking, like, can someone's calling change? Right? Remember, do
Hmm.
you remember asking that question? And that was a good introspective question for the whole group, let alone yourself, but because you had the courage to share that. Because, some people, especially guys, I will say, and women too, but we're like, if we don't know like what we're doing, that's why we don't ask for directions, because if we don't know where we're going, what we're doing, that's kind of, that brings a guilt or shame or we kind of condemn ourselves back to that language piece. And I talk a lot about to folks about in the resistance. There's internal resistance, our words, what we think about ourselves, how we emotionally are we healthy, mentally are we healthy, and then there's also the external. We're definitely going to face external resistance. Either someone doesn't like us, or just the way the world is, that it's broken that it is, and just messed up that it is.
Mm.
But we can more control the internal. And of course, it's not
Mhm.
at a snap of a finger, but over time. And you are doing that. And so, again, a little another teaser about what we'll talk about, how you're taking new roots and new foundations and growing out of those, as opposed to maybe some of the stuff of the past that you decided to leave behind.
Right. Okay.
I think it's great. So I love the educator piece. And I think I've had to struggle with that too a little bit over the time, is that we're not just, and we see a bigger environment, as you mentioned. So good stuff. Well, you're firing me up. So
Mhm.
um, how did it relate? So you're married and you have one child or two. Remind me.
I have two little boys.
That's what I thought. Okay, I thought you had two, and I thought they're boys. I just didn't want to have to do some editing later, so I was just gonna let you answer. But how is it with the family? Because some of that shift you're going through, not only being a new mom, but then career. There's a lot of big mountains you decided to tackle somewhat at once. How does that all go in relation? Because your husband's also an entrepreneur as well, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
My husband is a serial entrepreneur.
Yes. And we're not talking about
And
Captain Crunch, right? So.
he insisted, he's been insisting for years that I leave
Hmm.
my place of employment, but I could not. I physically, mentally, it was such a big deal for me. Um, Crazy fact, I have had a job since I was 13 years old.
Okay, good.
So,
Not afraid to
um,
work.
right. And so because of that, my coming ups, my upbringing, I
Hmm.
should say, I hail from a single parent household
Okay.
um, of amazingly strong Black women um, who have taught me how to walk through life
Okay.
and how to walk through life as a Black woman in particular. And so I needed to always have a job. And so I couldn't leave my work because it was the stability. And
Yes.
because my husband is an entrepreneur, it was me keeping the job was kind of a catch 22 because on one hand, me keeping the job provided the stability, but I also felt on the other hand, me keeping the job allowed me to support him in his entrepreneurship
Okay.
because I knew that I would every 2 weeks have a check. I
Mm.
had insurance. I had all of the things that others tell us that we should have. You know,
Right.
I had retirement. I have the will. I have the life insurance, and all of those things were tied up into this work. And I felt that I couldn't leave.
Mm.
So even though he was very supportive of me leaving, I didn't
Hmm.
feel like there was enough support in place for me to feel comfortable to leave. And as one of your questions, you asked me, what was it that was kind of the final push? And what we did was is when I first met my husband, I we were dating, but I bought a home as a single person.
Okay.
And when we were married, we moved into the home that I had purchased prior to the marriage. And I bought when the market was like dirt cheap, had fallen, and I was in a space where I could buy. So I purchased a home. It was a tiny little bitty thing, and I was unhappy even in that space. It wasn't enough space because, when I first met him, it was myself and my cat.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so 3 bedroom house is fine for yourself and a cat.
Exactly.
But then when it becomes yourself, your cat, his dog, and you, that's a little tighter. And then one baby comes along, and then two babies comes along, and we were bursting at the seams. So a part of the transition was the market is wonderful right now for sellers,
Right.
and so I sold my home. That was hard for me because
Mm.
I wanted to keep it. I wanted to keep it for some really cultural reasons.
Okay.
Part of my upbringing
Right.
with my single mom was that you need to be able to take care of yourself.
Sure.
And so I wanted to keep the house as a means of falling back if this marriage doesn't work, because I also don't know what marriage looks like and how to do it. So that was a fear of mine. But I leaned in to God and I just said, "Tell me what to do." And um, one day, my husband's in my ear telling me one thing, and then God's talking to me too. And I said, "Fine, sell it."
Just
Fine,
like
sell
that,
it.
huh?
Yes. And my husband's like, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yes, sell it. Let's sell it. I'm done. I don't want to talk about it anymore because then I would change my." So we sold my house and
Okay.
we were able to get a larger home, which I am so happy to have because we needed it. During the quarantine, I was teaching out of my garage.
Hmm.
It was terrible, but I
Like
had to
really
make it
terrible
work.
or just terrible?
Just just terrible.
Okay. Okay.
But I had two little children who were also quarantined with me, and
Yeah.
I was responsible for the education of other people's children. And so, in order to keep my children entertained and safe, I taught in the garage while they played. So that
Mm.
was the best thing
Hmm.
that I can come up with. But had we had a larger home, I would have a space for that. And I didn't have a space of my own because it was
Right.
all consumed family.
Right.
We
Right.
sold our and as a result of selling the home and some push from God, I think too, there were some negative things that in our broken world, as you say, I think that was the perfect way to describe what's happening. The broken world, I was already experiencing some all my life, I've experienced some difficulty around race and race relations. But I kind of just suppress those things because I have to live. I have to go to work every day, and I can't allow someone saying something that hurts my feelings to be the reason why I can't feed my family. So,
Right.
but last year was the straw that broke the camel's back for me.
Okay.
And all of the pieces just fell into place, and I really contribute that to me finally saying, I hear you, God. Like, it is time. It is time to let go and trust that you've sent me this man who
Mm.
has been encouraging me, who will break his back so that I don't have to worry about where the money is going to come from. And then you allowed me to sell my home and have a cushion enough to replace my salary. Now I'm trying desperately to not spend it like I'm going to make another check next week because I'm not.
Right. Not
Uh,
yet.
but right, but I am perfectly able to pay the things that need to be paid, like private school for my children, or
Okay.
private school for one of them and daycare for the other. I'm still able to pay for those things and the car notes and the meals, and my husband pays things too, and we're able to do that. I had to trust God who said, I've sent you a man who's here to support you. But trust, lean on him. Then he also, when I say he, I mean God. God
Hmm.
also said, and now you have some money that you don't have to worry because you can't take it with you when you die. So
Wait, let me write
if
that
you
down.
use it, if you use it now, it'll come back to you because part of my resistance to leaving was I had actually sold the home before I resigned. But
Okay.
I decided um but but I decided that I wanted that money to be earmarked for the purchase of a new home. But that just really wasn't what needed to happen with that money. I really don't believe, and now God showing me that wasn't what that was for. It wasn't for the purchase of a new home. It was so that you can relax and do what I'm telling you to do in
Mm.
comfort and
Oh,
not be
wow.
afraid. Because at some point we'll get back to having a nice little amount of money for a down payment. But right now, this is supposed to be so that I can do this.
This is amazing. I mean, and because I think I said that because remember when I texted you and said, "Hey, you want to?" I don't know. We caught up on something, and I said, "Oh, well, we sold our home," and you're like, oh, "We did too," And
Yeah.
so there was just some lines there. But I think my wife and I are the same in a similar journey. I'm an entrepreneur. She bought a home first, and then she met me, and I met her, and then we got married, and then we sold her home. So just like you're saying, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of similarities here. So you're really, ministering to me here too. So very cool stuff. And because your husband's not always an angel, right? Nor are you, and nor am I, nor is my wife. But yet
Mm.
God did put us together for a purpose and for a reason. And if we could just hold on and trust and see it through, despite the difficulties, He's got something bigger and greater on the other side that we never wish, dream, hope, or imagine. I mean, His Word says so. So let's
Mhm.
hold on to that promise. I think that's what you're doing. That is what you're doing. You're telling me that,
And
right?
believing, yeah, absolutely, and believing that it's okay. But my husband is is not religious either, but he's always like, God will make it happen for us. God will make it happen for us. And I'm just like, this whole time I'm like, I don't know about that, but you still have to do some work. You still have, but he's
Yes.
always been of that. He's always been of that, just relax. God will make sure you're taken care of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm having to learn how to relax.
Okay. Man, I gotta meet your husband. You gotta meet my wife. So, and by the way, your husband has a name, right? What
Yes,
is
he
his
does.
name?
His name is Gerald.
Okay, Gerald.
Gerald.
Okay. All right, Gerald. Good job, man. Encouraging your wife. So, well, good stuff. I think, again, this dovetails right into what we want to chat about next. I mean, you're overcoming the obstacles by not having all the answers, right, Latanya, but by having faith.
Yes, for sure.
And
100%.
yeah, and I think what I'm hearing you say, and I'm trying to encourage myself and then my wife too, is that let's just win today. Let's win today, and then tomorrow. The Bible says there's enough worries about tomorrow. Let's just focus on. If we're going to worry at all, worry about today. Let's not worry about
Mm,
what's down the road. So that old saying, "Seize the day, carpe diem." Let's win today, and then we'll
mm,
see what tomorrow brings when we get to it. And I think that's
mm.
what you're doing. So good stuff. Now, you told me a little bit about your crossroads journey. I mean, that's where you were at. You were at a crossroads, going, which way do I go? And another scripture says, stand at the crossroads and look and ask for the ancient paths, and you can walk in them, right? And so here you are, just checking in with God, considering Him, which is so funny
Mm.
for us to say, but
Right.
conversing with Him, and considering Him and conversing with Him, and then going the way He wants you to go through this crossroads. What? Tell me before we get into the school that you're
Mm.
launching. What is Montessori? Explain that concept. Explain that idea. Explain what you've done in the past and where you're going next. But
Okay.
what is
So
Montessori?
so Montessori is a philosophy of educating
Okay.
that is centered around children and is centered around what children need and their development. So Dr. Montessori, I think Montessori is like 100 and we were just celebrating her. We still celebrate or commemorate her birthday every year at school with a special birthday walk. But it's definitely a 100 plus years old. She was, and her philosophy, but she was an Italian doctor. She was a scientist, and among some of the first, one of the first women doctors, and
Hmm.
she studied children and Montessori philosophy. Um, she actually started her first school, Casa dei Bambini, that it
Nice,
means the
nicely
children,
done.
which means the children's house.
Okay.
And the children that were there were the special children, children that at this time in 2021 we would say they had diagnosed problems, right?
Okay.
They had some type of diagnoses. They were special needs children,
Okay.
or they were orphans, and that was her first examination of children. So in our classrooms, they are multi-aged. So they
Ah,
do them in threes, as planes of development. So three ages in one classroom. And it starts all the way at infant and toddlers. I am not trained as an infant toddler, but it starts at infant toddler. And then it goes to 3 to 6 year olds, which we call the children's house. Some people call it primary.
okay.
In like regular public school land, it's preschool. But there are 3 year olds, 4 year olds, 5 year olds, and 6 year olds. So like children who are six are really five, and when they leave us, they're six.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then the next grouping is 6 to 9 year olds, so first, second, and third graders. And then the next grouping would be upper elementary. We call it upper elementary. That's fourth, fifth, and sixth graders. And then finally, it actually goes, there's schools all the way to high school,
I had no
but
idea. I didn't know that.
but
Okay. Cool.
yes, but down here in Florida, it stops because there aren't any established high schools, but it does stop in what we consider to be secondary one and secondary two, which is middle school.
Okay.
And all of those ages are grouped together specifically so that you have children that are coming in that are new and you have leaders. and you keep them for 3 years. So one teacher keeps that group of children for 3 years, and they stay with us. We teach them everything. Um, our curriculum is based on hands-on materials,
Hmm.
and our subject areas are just like other schools, but actually a lot broader and a lot deeper. So we have, math and science and reading and writing and spelling. And we also teach in the science areas. We specifically have zoology and botany that we teach children, and they learn zoology and botany from itty bitty little ones. They do geometry, which is all hands on tactile materials. And then they also do geography, history, and we don't call it social studies, it's just all history.
Okay.
But essentially the same thing, but we also do geography. And so our kiddos learn all kinds of stuff. Um, I'll call a small lesson. I'll call the first graders, or if a child, for example, is in third grade and they need some skills that they maybe hadn't mastered from first grade, I may call them as well.
Mm,
It is a cooperative learning, in like regular traditional sense, project-based type learning. And
right.
so I pull
Real
out a little
life.
material. hmm I teach them something and then they apply it. And when they're in another curriculum area, and we consider it a curriculum area, is called practical life. And we teach practical life skills, like shoe tying or buttoning or ladling, which all of these things strengthen hands. They're very tactile, so it helps with writing and dexterity. Montessori is incredible. There is very little that you can't do, or very little that isn't covered in Montessori curriculum. It's very
When
little.
when do they eat?
They eat. They have snack time. They prepare their own
Okay.
snack because that's practical
There you
life.
go. Yeah, exactly.
And they eat lunch at normal, lunchtime like other kiddos. They have PE and Spanish and art and all of those
Okay.
amazing things also.
Okay, good. Just checking, just making sure there's eating involved.
Yeah, we
Um,
definitely feed them. They definitely
yeah,
socialize.
well, I love the group aspect. I mean, isn't that one of the criticisms of, not that we're here to criticize the school system per se or anything like that, but just I remember like everyone works by themselves. There's no collaboration. That's just not real
Mhm.
life, man. And nor should it be, you know?
And if you're more excelled in one thing or another, you should have the flexibility to ebb and flow with those things, because that's what
Hmm.
happens in real life. And when you're in school, you have to learn trigonometry, for example. But
Mm.
unless you're doing something, calculating the trajectory of something later in life as a choice, as a given career, then you don't need that information per se. So why not allow the opportunity for children to get really good at what they're really good at, and to work on what they're not really good at.
Yeah, I think too. I was talking to my son Grayson the other day just about, at school, like, hey, he thinks math and reading is boring. That's because he's really
Mm,
good at it. He's kind of bored he's in first grade with the age. I go, but gee,
mm,
you got to seek to serve people, help the
mm,
other kids out, encourage them, be there for them. I mean, within the parameters that he's given and all that, but
mm,
be a teammate,
mm.
be a helper. Um,
Yeah.
not just have a bad attitude. Which I can
Well,
get
and
if you're bored.
you will
So
find that in Montessori classrooms that, children are mentor.
exactly.
They don't necessarily assign themselves. I mean, we don't assign them, but the children know who's really good at what.
Right.
And
Right.
and so they will seek out that person, and they're allowed to and encouraged to seek out someone. And I may say, "Oh, I'm not I'm busy right now showing this lesson to so and so. Can you please go and ask so and so over there?"
Yep. Yep. I when people were ready to goof off, they found me in school. I was like the king of goofing off. So that's the teacher did not send people to me, Latania.
But she
But
maybe had you start the game at recess.
yeah, maybe. She also I was first in line to get swatted in Catholic school too. So Sister Barbara Ann, I'll never forget. No, I'm good. I don't need to go see her. Um, too many times. We were like BFFs. It's not a good thing. Um, Well, so this is great because I could see your passion in it, right? I mean, you like perked up, not that you didn't before, but you're like, okay, oh yeah, Montessori, let me roll up my sleeves. Let me tell you about what we do and how it affects lives and how you
Mm,
get to participate in this learning, which is so fun to see the light bulbs go off in kids, right? I mean, even ourselves, right? Oh my gosh, little Tommy taught me something today. Never would,
mhm.
we don't go into the day necessarily as adults thinking that, but our children teach us so much more if we're willing to receive it.
Oh, 100%. That as me and myself as an educator, absolutely. I do learn more from them than I think that I give them. So I love it. Love it, love
Yeah,
it.
that's cool. Okay, so shifting gears here a little bit, but it all ties together, is that you left your Montessori teaching position.
Hmm.
And I remember you kind of being a little concerned about how to go about that, which, hey, if you're working at a place for so long or you have relationships or you know how it's going to be received, of course, there's going to be some trepidation or some, concern, but you took the step, you took the
Hmm.
leap. Tell us about that conversation. How did you prepare for that conversation? How did you have that exiting conversation? And where did you go from there?
So what what happened was is that I was lamenting at lunch about not being happy in my space.
Hmm.
And a coworker came in to use the microwave because my classroom was set up very cozy. So she came in to use the microwave, and um, we at the place where I work, and it's not where I worked. It isn't for the lack thereof, but the Montessori community doesn't have a lot of people of color represented in it.
Okay.
As educators, leaders, and trainers, it's definitely a growing space, and
Yes.
so when there are other people of color, we gravitate to each other. You know, like the book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together at the Cafeteria? It's because we need to relate, you know. So
Sure.
she, she and I were talking, and I was like, you know, we really need to have lunch and talk. And I do not recall exactly what happened, but we shared that we both wanted to leave this place and start a school. And so, as I had alluded to previously, the last year was very difficult for everyone.
Hmm.
But in regards to speaking to my journey, I had a lot of issues. It just was so much in my face that I couldn't ignore it. There was a lot of racial problems that I was experiencing in the workspace. And it was very hard for me to swallow because I had been serving at that school for a very long time. And I felt that I had earned my stripes. I felt that I had earned some respect. And that was not happening.
Hmm.
And so I was I just was ready to leave. And what ended up happening was she and I started meeting and having lunch together.
Love it.
And um, she told me about Wildflower Montessori Schools, Wildflower Foundation. I'm sorry, I'm losing the word. Wildflower. It's a foundation. Wildflower Foundation.
Okay.
um, and I was like, whoa, what's that? I'm gonna look it up.
Hmm.
So she sent me a link because she's very tech savvy, and so she sends me a link, and I was like, okay, great. So I look it up, and so then this started over a year ago. We were still working in the classroom, and we were just kind of behind the scenes working on. They also have like a very Montessori approach to things, so we had to complete these albums where we discovered our journey, our vision, what do we want to see happen? How can we impact the community? And it was all these questions that made us think about why even do this journey before we actually signed on, because we just
Yeah.
recently signed on. But for a year, we are literally just trying to figure out what are we doing. And I I went in for my evaluation, and I was what I learned later gaslighted at my evaluation. And I left my evaluation in tears.
Mm.
Actually, no, I came back to my classroom, and I had been doing a class called Embracing Equity. And as I'm listening to one of the lectures that was assigned for me, because I had homework to do. So during my breaks, I would do schoolwork for myself. And I was listening to one of the lectures, and as I'm listening to the lecture, my co-teacher, who I was very fond of, she started to tell me, "Wow, LaTania, they do that to you here. Oh, they do that to you here." And as she's telling me this, that's when I started to cry because I was holding myself together. I was very upset after I left that meeting, but I put on my mask so that no one knew how upset I was. And as I start to cry, she looks at me and she says, you probably shouldn't listen to that right now." But I had already had my resignation letter with me. I had written it the week before,
Hmm.
but
Interesting
I was
timing, just all of this coming together. So,
but I was afraid. I still wasn't sure. I still was not ready.
hmm.
But I tell people, I'm like, God told me, he just was like, clearly I have to kick you in your behind for you to
That's what I was
listen.
thinking.
Clearly I have to kick you, you know? And right. He pushed me right over the ledge. That meeting, l- after I pulled myself together, I went into the principal's office and I politely slid him my letter and told him that I would not be returning. And he asked why, why and what am I planning on doing? And honestly, I didn't feel comfortable telling him what it was that I was
Hmm.
planning on doing.
Hmm.
And so I just basically told him that I was following my dreams. And that was how I left that. And I left the meeting and I went back to my room, my classroom, because I was still working hours, and
Right, right.
I breathed the deepest sigh of relief that I had ever felt. And I knew it was the right thing to do.
All right.
I knew it was the right thing to do. And I haven't looked back, which surprisingly, that wasn't the first time I've left. I've left the school before, but I came back 3 days later.
Wow, that sounded like mine. I'm sure not for the same reason, but I was in high school one time, well, actually about 4 or 5 times I had to leave for 3 days, but that was called suspension. Back to the goofing
No, no.
off point.
No
I know that wasn't
suspensions.
your reason.
But I felt the what I in my reflection, the first time that I had resigned my teaching position there, I went and I taught at a traditional school for a couple of
Hmm.
days, literally.
Oh,
And this time I'm leaving not to try and fit in a different box that I'm not supposed to be in, but this time I'm leaving to do me, to do
yeah,
exactly what I love, to do exactly who I am. I'm not a traditional educator. That I just don't buy into that. But this time I'm leaving and I'm leaving to do what I am to do.
right. Calling,
Mm.
purpose. So you know your purpose now and you're living it out. You're already loving it. You're in a different season. You're not actually executing on it because you haven't launched what you're
Yes.
launching yet,
Mm.
but you're working diligently towards that. And the Bible says that diligent will prosper. So praying that prosperity for you in your purpose. So tell us what's next, my friend. I mean, what did you decide to do? We kind of got the little tee it up. Now we get to hit the golf
Yeah.
ball off the tee. What are you and your friend and your partner and your teammate? What are you guys doing now?
So I mentioned it just recently, but we have joined Wildflower Schools, and
Okay.
it is a group of micro schools. So they're small schools, no more than three
Okay.
classrooms. And they're Montessori private. They can be any type of entity, because the one kind of misnomer about Montessori is that it's a Catholic thing, and it's absolutely not. It's actually um, there are parochial Montessori schools,
Hmm.
but there's also charter schools, which is where I have been in the field of charter.
Okay.
When I prior to living here in Florida, I taught at a what would be kind of considered a magnet program, but a Montessori public school in North Carolina. There are also, oh yeah, those are it, the charter, public, and private.
Okay.
So we are a part of the private um, sector of Wildflower Montessori Schools. So we'll be an independent school, and it will be a micro school. So we will have two classrooms to begin with. We will have one classroom for 3 to 6 year olds, so that's the primary age, and then one classroom for what we call lower elementary, which is first, second, and third grade.
Okay.
And then we are looking to, in the future, add upper elementary, one classroom of 9 to 12 year olds, which is fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. And then we will, our plan is to stop. So Wildflower schools are really, really cool and very unique schools. They started up in like Massachusetts area. And um, imagine, I always liken it to this. You remember when you're little, you pluck the dandelion out of the grass when their heads were white and
Yeah.
fluffy,
Yep.
and you blow them and they float away. One seedling school starts, and then from that seedling, other seedlings are sparked. So you essentially we are encouraging each other. It's a network of teacher leaders helping other teacher leaders to start other micro Montessori Wildflower schools.
Love
And
it.
so we do not have any wildflower, currently do not have any other wildflower schools in Florida. But recently, my partner and I were put in touch with, because we're all networked through our um, operations managers or operations directors, whichever title they feel that day. But it's a teal organization, so it's not like you do what mastermind says do. It is everybody is here and everyone is equal, and you operate how you see fit within the 7 principles of Wildflower. However
Okay.
that looks for you is how it looks for you. um, so there is another Wildflower school that is opening in Amelia Island, which
Oh,
from what it's up north somewhere, I don't
near
exactly know where
Jacksonville.
it is.
Hmm.
And there's a teacher leader there working on opening a school. Hers is called Rain Lily Montessori. It's
Hmm.
really, really very beautiful. All of our Montessori schools within the Wildflower Network are some type of wildflower name for the most part. And so when you have several or a cluster of Wildflower Montessori schools, you're considered a hub. And so right now, my partner and I are the emerging hub is what we've been our name. So we are the
Look at
emerging hub.
you.
We're getting it started.
Yes.
Having to um, kind of stumble our way through some things, ask a lot of questions, and definitely running into some places of unknowing, because I am an educator by trade, and I am not a business person. I am I'm learning the business. And what's wonderful about having two teacher leaders, which Wildflower was genius. Um,
Mm-hmm.
one of your teacher leaders must be Montessori trained. Because again, why
Mm.
would you be Montessori school without being a Montessori trained
It's not
educator?
like a cool name.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, I want to be that. I want to be
Yeah.
called doctor too, but
Good point.
um, so the my partner and I'm the Montessori, and she actually comes from the business world, and she has
There you go.
transitioned into education, and so she worked finance. So it's the perfect
What?
kind of marriage
Yes.
to start this school, and that's why I'm saying, like, God has totally made this happen. Has been doing things along the lines to prepare me to be ready for something like this. And he brought her to me. She's only
Mm-hmm.
been in my circle for 3 years, and um, that has been wonderful. So she is teaching me the business and finance, and I am teaching her the Montessori. And so it's been wonderful.
I love
Yeah.
it. I love the old saying or the saying I've heard many times that God calls the unqualified, but he qualifies the called. And again, that's a journey, right? That's not
Mm,
overnight. That's over time. And yet
mm,
also the word, when the disciples would go out to talk to people about Jesus, they would go out two by two. So here you are,
mm,
two by two, going out,
mm,
never alone, quote, per se, and also have aligning or complementary gifts and
mhm.
strengths that undergird this whole thing. And the cool thing is, again, the finance piece. Hello, love it or leave it, like it or not, money is a tool to get this done. And so here you are, you got someone that can help you with that. So go, God, go, and you get to
Yes.
experience great joy and
Yes.
learning, right?
Yes.
So that's
Oh,
so
I
cool.
forgot to tell you, Brian, that the reason why we chose the structure of our school, because some
Yeah.
of the Wildflower schools are strictly primary schools or strictly elementary schools. We chose the
Okay.
structure of our school because my partner and I both have children, and so the 3 to 6 classroom will be for our younger children because she has one son. So
Okay.
our son will be in that little in the primary classroom, and then my oldest son will be in the next classroom.
Oh my
So
gosh, love it.
yeah, so like part of my drive was that I wanted my sons to have um, equity, um, equality, a safe space to be who they are. And one of our pillars at our school, which we have named Blazing Stars Montessori School, which is a native wildflower to Florida.
I love it. I
Um,
love it. I didn't even know
uh,
that beforehand, and I love the name already. And now I get the backstory.
mhm. And even more so, there's more even to even just the name and why we chose it. But our boys will be at our school, and one of our pillars that we want to make sure that we know for the community purposes, we are going to have a special programming around the education of boys because boys need something different in a classroom setting than
Yes.
girls.
Yep.
And a lot of times our boys are just considered, oh, they're ADHD, or oh, they just can't sit, or oh, they're bad, or whatever it is. But the reality is that school isn't structured for little boys. It's just not, they
Oh my
need
gosh.
they need
Hmm.
more outside time, more hands-on stuff, building things, breaking things. Like all of that is a part of it. That's genuinely a part of it. Breaking things is a part of their learning. And so we will have some of that
Let's
happening.
deconstruct that quickly. You know. So
um, but the also with Blazing Stars, the name of the school, it's a native wildflower to Florida, but the indigenous peoples that lived here in our area used it for medicinal purposes, to heal and to treat diseases.
come
And
on.
that was one of the other reasons because some of the diseases that it treated was symptoms of cancer. And my mother and my grandmother passed away from cancer, and so that was very important to me. And the flower is purple, which was my mother's favorite color.
Oh my gosh. Come on,
So
LaTania.
yeah, so we chose that for that reason.
And it's regal. There's royalty, right? The purple is a royal. And again, if you're a faith, and there's a royal priesthood. I mean, I can go on. I could tag on this with you if you want. So very good
Yeah.
stuff. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh. And I think about there's something I was going to tell you. This may be for somebody out there, just the fact that it's not done in a vacuum and it's not done in a day, and there's things that are going on behind the scenes here that we would never put together on our own, but yet God is orchestrating it and we get to look back and go, wow. And the cool thing I think it is a catapult or a platform to what's next.
Mhm.
And who knows what that's going to be, but now there's like if you talk about equity, there's like an equity, there's a belief, there's a trust, there's a relationship, and that we can follow a leader that has given us, reason to follow. And so anyway, I'm
Mhm.
just going on and on. There's so many great messages that come from this, which is why I wanted to have a conversation with you in this format to encourage folks that are listening to go out and find out their purpose, discover it, or maybe recover it.
Mm.
Begin to live it out. Doesn't mean live it out in its final form, but over time, living it out, taking those steps. And then when you know it and live it, you're going to love it because that's
Mm.
why you're made. It's how you're made. You're called. That's your purpose. And I said, like a hammer makes a horrible, shovel. but it makes a great, well, hammer, right? You can dig a hole with a shovel or with a hammer. It's just going to take
Mhm.
a long time. It's not going to be the best hole. And you can hammer a nail with a shovel, but you might end up injuring somebody or yourself in the process.
Mhm.
What they're meant to be is to dig a hole and to hammer a nail. And so you're doing that. And so I'm so proud of you and thankful that we got to meet and have this conversation. So preach on, teach
Well,
on.
another awesome, really amazing thing about Blazing Stars and Wildflower is that the schools are also structured to provide Montessori education to those that can't typically afford it.
Yes.
So, our school will have we will have a population of children who are at or below the poverty line that will be able to attend our school because we're going to be accepting scholarships, we're going to be accepting vouchers, we're going to be building in ways for children to attend our schools and receive really good education at a rate in which they can afford. And
Okay.
so that's another one of our like major things is that we're hoping to bring equity, not just a racial equity, but also socioeconomics. You know, everybody's child deserves to have a safe, happy educational experience. And so that's what Blazing Stars will um, absolutely be a part of. And people who are, say, because some people think that Montessori is only for the elite, and it just really is not true at all. And but we need to have a good mix of children like that, because that's how we learn from each other. That's how we make this place that's so broken a better place, by integrating
Yes.
together, because the elite have something to learn from us little poor people,
Well,
and yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited for you. I just thought about it, even our little Creative for Good Works group. We had, white, black, Latin, male,
Mhm.
female, younger, older, kids. No, I mean, even like a group of like, what do we have, 8 or something?
It was
And
very
yet that
sweet.
needs to be celebrated and integrated. And let's go out and take the hill together, man. And let's
Hmm.
go have fun while we're doing it too. Um,
Hmm.
and I was thinking about one thing. Oh my gosh, we could be on this forever. And we've been doing this for what now? 3 hours? I look at the clock. Just kidding. Is that one of the things I thought about earlier, what you said, that you had a little bit of mommy guilt when you
Hmm.
went to do something for yourself. You called it, you're doing it for yourself, but I don't see it that way. And I know you don't now. You did was you went and watered a seed that had been planted. You went and took care of yourself, and now you get to bring your boys with you. So you will more than redeem that time. So
Hmm.
that really struck me as something like, oh my gosh, you invested time, you sacrificed earlier to invest into the
Hmm.
future.
Hmm.
So well done. Well
Which is
done.
also why my children are not home with me right now. I send my
Okay.
children to daycare, to school,
Mm,
because this is not my time to be with my children. Because obviously, I could homeschool my children, no problem,
right. Right.
save myself some money, right? But
Yeah.
that's not what this time is for. This time is my investment in them, future term. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
100%.
exactly. Love it. Okay. So I think we got a lot, and this is great, LaTanya. Thank you so much. Um, what advice, we're going to do two things. Well, I'm going to ask you for what advice would you give to people that are kind of kicking the can down the street? It's similar to
Hmm.
what I did and similar to what you have done and you shared about their dream, about their purpose, about just even next steps, whatever the next step or next steps is to be. What advice would you give those people right now as we close about their vision, about the mission they have and the goals they have? What advice would you give them to go for it?
Well, first off, I promise you this is not necessarily a ploy for Creative for Good Works, but that was what I needed. I needed to take some time to self-reflect. And I needed other people to say, hey, I don't have an answer for you, but God does.
Hmm.
And here are some
Okay.
of the, because remember I said I'm not religious per se, and
Hmm.
I went to Catholic school my whole life, but I surely cannot
Ah.
quote Bible verses per se.
Okay.
But um I needed the Bryans to say, well, right here it says in the Bible. Oh, my favorite one was those action words. Remember, I told you that all of those words were action words at in the section of the book at the beginning where you're standing at the crossroads and you have to look
Mhm.
and you have to
Mhm.
listen and then you have to act. And I was like, oh, listen at those verbs. My advice is that to go to the Creative for Good Works, invest in you, and then trust. You have to, at some point, trust that it will all work out. And if you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, then it will be easy. It won't be hard.
Mm.
Because after leaving my career, after leaving the workforce, after having gone for my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, I spent all this time educating myself and working for 16 years. I wasn't sure what to do, but I left and then all kinds of things started to happen for me. I was selected to speak at the American Montessori Society conference this year, which is a big deal. It's where all the Montessorians kind of converge and learn from each other and grow and network
That's right.
and
Yes.
build. I was selected to speak and I was not anticipating that. And I'm doing something like this. I'm actually speaking about how I found my voice and um, am now ready to croak. It's called The Frog Who Found Her Voice and Croaked Her Own Pond. So I'm ready to croak about my pond. Ribbit, ribbit, ribbit.
Croak on.
So,
Well, that is,
I
I
did
love it.
that. And then I've had several interviews for positions that I'm not looking for. And I'm increasing um, my my footprint in helping other Montessori teachers. I'm training other Montessori teachers, and I'm loving it, loving it, loving it. And I'm happy and feeling fulfilled. And at the same time, I'm still scared about things. Definitely still
Sure.
scared about things that I do not, my unknowns. And I am comfortable in that, but you have to find that peace.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is fantastic. And I think I'm thinking about your book that you'll be writing in the future. You can use the transcripts for this. There's a lot of a good starting place to get that written. So at least the chapters are definitely outlined already, and there'll be more to come, right? So
Yes, sir.
yeah, I'm so proud of you and so glad I can get to call you a friend and excited about what's next. So there you go, folks. Wasn't that an exciting podcast with my good friend and fellow entrepreneur, LaTania Scott, taking Montessori to a whole new level on purpose and with passion, helping people to really grow and go in the purpose that God has given them. I hope you really enjoyed that and look forward to getting you more information about how you can connect with LaTania and her Blazing Star School coming soon.